$34,000. Gone. In a single day. And before you judge us, because trust me, I've already judged myself plenty, I want you to know that we were not some wealthy couple throwing a lavish party. We were a regular couple, working regular jobs, deeply in love, with a dream in our heads of what the perfect wedding was supposed to look like. And the wedding industry? It is very, very good at taking that dream and turning it into a receipt. So today, I'm going to do something that most people are too embarrassed to do. I'm going to open the books completely. I'm going to tell you exactly where every dollar went: the venue, the catering, the flowers, the dress, the DJ, the photographer, all of it. I'm going to tell you what we got for each of those dollars, what we actually remember, what our guests actually cared about, and, most importantly, what we would do completely differently if we could go back. This video is for every couple who is engaged right now, staring at their laptop, trying to figure out how to plan a wedding without going broke. It's for anyone who has ever attended a beautiful wedding and quietly wondered, how much did this cost? And it's for anyone like me, sitting on the other side of that day, doing the math and going, we should have been smarter about this. Let's get into it. Before I tell you our story specifically, I want to give you some context, because I think understanding the system is the first step to not getting eaten alive by it. According to the Knott's 2026 Real Wedding Study, which surveyed over 10,000 US couples married in 2025, the average cost of a wedding in the United States right now is $34,200. That's basically exactly what we spent. Right in line with the national average. So on one hand, hey, we are normal. On the other hand, we just spent the equivalent of a brand new Toyota Camry on a single party that lasted 8 hours. And here's the thing that really gets me. That $34,000 figure is the average, which means it's being pulled upward by big, expensive weddings. The median, the number right in the middle, where half of couples spend less and half spend more, is closer to $18,000. That's a huge gap. It tells you that a lot of couples are having beautiful, meaningful weddings for far less than what the industry tries to convince you is normal. Zola found that wedding costs have gone up 30% since 2019. 30%. And here's a fact that will make your stomach drop. Nearly 3/4 of couples who married in 2024 spent more than they originally budgeted. This is not a coincidence. This is a system. The wedding industry in the United States is worth over $66 billion a year. And that industry has a very specific business model. It takes the most emotionally charged day of your life, a day when you want everything to be perfect, a day when you will feel genuine social pressure to impress your family and friends, and it attaches a price tag to every single element of it. The venue has a wedding premium. The florist has a wedding premium. The cake has a wedding premium. The limo, the stationery, the rehearsal dinner, everything costs more the moment you say the word wedding. We fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. Here's how it happened. Let me walk you through our budget line by line. I'm not going to be vague about this. I think vagueness is part of why couples keep making the same mistakes. So here it is, every category. The venue, $9,500. This was our single biggest expense, and it set the tone for everything else. We chose a beautiful event space with exposed brick walls, string lights, and a separate cocktail area. We loved it. When we walked in for the tour, we both looked at each other and just knew. Which, by the way, is exactly the emotional response venues are designed to trigger. What we didn't fully clock at the time was that the venue fee was only part of the cost. The $9,500 covered the space for the evening. It did not cover tables, chairs, linens, or bar service, all of which we had to rent or pay for separately. By the time we added all of those things in, the true venue cost was closer to $11,500. Catering and bar, $8,200. We had 115 guests. We did a plated dinner, 3 courses, with past appetizers during cocktail hour, an open bar for 5 hours, and a late-night snack station. This was $71 per person before gratuity and service charges. After gratuity and the mandatory 22% service charge the caterer added at the end, we were at $8,200. Photography, $4,200. This was our photographer for 8 hours plus a second shooter for 4 hours, with edited digital files and a private online gallery. Honestly, this was money I do not regret. When everything else from the wedding day has faded, we still have those photographs. The investment in a great photographer is the one expense that keeps paying you back, literally for decades. Videography, $2,800. We added videography as a last-minute decision, and I'm so glad we did. A 4-minute highlight reel that we still watch on our anniversary. Absolutely worth it. The 98% figure is real. Nearly every couple who skips the videographer regrets it. Flowers and decor, $3,800. This is where things get embarrassing. On flowers. On things that wilted within 24 hours. We had a bridal bouquet, 6 bridesmaid bouquets, 17 table centerpieces, ceremony arch florals, and some greenery along the aisle. It looked gorgeous in photos. And then the next morning, it was in the garbage. The dress, $2,100, plus $400 in alterations, so $2,500 total. She looked absolutely stunning. But she has also worn that dress exactly once. It remains the most expensive piece of clothing she has ever owned by a factor of 10. DJ and entertainment, $2,000. We hired a professional DJ with a full lighting setup. He was excellent. He read the room well, kept the dance floor packed, and took our do not play list seriously. No regrets here. Hair and makeup, $1,200. This was for the bride and her 3 bridesmaids. 1 artist, 4 hours of work, travel fee included. The results were great. On a "this is your wedding day and you want to feel confident" basis, I understand why it happened. Invitations and stationery, $650. $650 on paper that most people glanced at and threw away. We had beautiful custom letterpress invitations with tissue paper inserts and wax seals. I do not think a single guest mentioned them. Wedding cake, $750. A 3-tier cake that fed our 115 guests. It tasted fine. By the time cake was served, most people were barely hungry. Half the cake came home with us and was eventually thrown away. Efficient, $400. Our ceremony was officiated by a professional who did a beautiful job. No complaints here. This is a non-negotiable expense that I'd pay again without hesitation. Transportation, $800. We rented a vintage car to take us from the ceremony to the reception. It was a 12-minute drive. We spent $800 on a 12-minute drive. We have one photo in front of the car. That photo cost $800. Rehearsal dinner, $1,200. The night before the wedding, we hosted a dinner for the wedding party and immediate family, about 25 people. It was a lovely evening. It also cost $1,200. Miscellaneous, tips, favors, weekend extras $1,400. Vendor tips, wedding favors that most guests left on the tables, a photo booth, sparklers for the exit that lasted 4 minutes, and about 15 small decisions that collectively added up to $1,400. Total, $34,000. There it is. Every dollar. Here's the thing I want you to understand. The wedding was beautiful. It really was. Our guests told us it was one of the best weddings they'd attended. We danced until our feet hurt. We cried during the vows. We looked at each other across the room multiple times during the night and felt this overwhelming wave of love and gratitude. None of that had a price tag on it. When I ask my wife what she remembers most about our wedding day, she doesn't say the centerpieces. She doesn't say the vintage car or the elaborate invitation suite. She says the moment she turned the corner and saw me at the end of the aisle and I started crying before she'd taken 3 steps. She says the speech her dad gave. She says our first dance. None of those things cost $34,000. And that is the point I want to drive home. The magic of a wedding is not manufactured by a vendor. It comes from the people in the room, the vows you mean, the love that's present. You cannot purchase that magic. You can only create the conditions for it. The question is, how much does it cost to create those conditions? The answer is, a lot less than $34,000. Okay. Here's the part of the video where I stop being nostalgic and start being honest about what went wrong. Mistake number 1. We never set a hard budget first. This is the single biggest mistake, and it's where everything else fell apart. We started planning before we had sat down and seriously decided on a firm number we would not cross. Instead, we started touring venues and getting excited before we had any real framework for decision-making. Once you fall in love with a venue, you've already lost. You start working backward from a venue, fitting everything else into whatever is left, instead of forward from a budget, choosing things that fit. The right order is, decide on your budget, decide on your guest count, then start looking at venues. That order matters enormously. Mistake number 2. We didn't understand the guest count equation. Here's the single most powerful number in all of wedding math: $284. That's the average cost per guest at an American wedding in 2025, according to the Knot. Think about what that means. Every single person you add to your guest list costs you, on average, $284 in food, drink, venue space, cake, favors, and all the rest. We had 115 guests. If we'd had 80 guests, we would have saved roughly $10,000. That's not a small number. That is a down payment on a car. That's a honeymoon upgrade. That's the first 6 months of an emergency fund. We invited people we genuinely wanted there, and we also invited people because we had to, because of social pressure, because our parents requested it, because it seemed rude not to. Every one of those had to guests cost $284. Mistake number 3. We overinvested in decor and flowers. Ask any married couple, 6 months after their wedding, what they remember about the centerpieces. I'll wait. The truth is, guests notice food, they notice music, they notice whether they're having fun. They do not notice that your table linens are ivory versus cream, or that your centerpieces have garden roses versus standard roses. Wedding florists are brilliant at upselling, and we were easy marks because we had no reference point for what things should cost and we desperately wanted everything to be beautiful. We spent $3,800 on flowers and decor. We could have spent $1,500 and no one, not a single guest, would have had a worse time. Mistake number 4. We didn't negotiate or shop around. For most of our vendors, we got 1 or 2 quotes, fell in love with someone, and signed the contract. We didn't negotiate on price. We didn't ask what could be removed from packages to reduce the cost. We didn't look at off-season dates, off-peak days, or alternative venue types that might have given us the same aesthetic for half the price. The wedding industry expects you to be too emotional and too overwhelmed to negotiate. We were. And we paid for it. All right. Here is the version of our wedding that I would plan today, knowing everything I know now. Same love. Same people. Much smarter financial decisions. Step 1. Start with a non-negotiable budget. Sit down with your partner, before you look at a single venue, before you follow a single wedding Instagram account, and decide on the maximum you will spend. Write it down. Put it somewhere you can both see it. And then stick to it like your financial future depends on it. Because it does. Step 2. Cut the guest list ruthlessly. This is the most powerful single lever you have over your wedding budget, and it's also the hardest emotionally. But let's do the math together. Going from 115 guests to 75 guests saves you approximately $11,360. That's more than a third of our entire budget, recovered by removing 40 people from a list. Who are those 40 people? Honestly, they're mostly people you've met twice at family reunions. They're work colleagues who would feel awkward saying no to the invitation. They're distant relatives your parents want to invite out of obligation. Have a frank conversation with yourself. Who do I actually want witnessing the beginning of my marriage? Invite those people. Let the others send a card. Step 3. Choose the venue smarter. The traditional event venue with a wedding premium built into every line item is one of the most expensive choices you can make. Instead, think about a family member's backyard or property, a public park with a permit, a restaurant with a private dining room, a community hall or social club, a brewery or winery with event space, a museum or gallery that does evening rentals. Many of these options are a fraction of the cost of a traditional wedding venue and can be made to look absolutely stunning with the right lighting and decor. We could have rented a gorgeous outdoor barn venue outside the city for $3,500 instead of $9,500, and it would have been arguably more beautiful. Step 4. Rethink the food format. Plated. 3-course dinners are the most expensive catering format. Consider a cocktail-style reception with heavy appetizers and food stations. It creates a more social, fun atmosphere and costs significantly less per head. Alternatively, a brunch or lunch wedding costs far less to cater than a dinner wedding and is genuinely trendy right now. A Sunday afternoon wedding with a generous brunch buffet is memorable, unique, and easily $30 to $50 per head cheaper than a Saturday evening dinner. Our catering was $71 per head. We could have had incredible food at $40 to $45 per head in a different format, saving us $3,000 to $4,000 on that single line item. Step 5. Invest in photography. Trim everywhere else. Here is the one place I will tell you to spend generously and without guilt: photography. The Zola survey found that 22% of couples wish they had spent more on photography after the fact. No one wishes they'd spent more on the centerpieces. Photos last forever. Flowers last a day. Prioritize accordingly. Get a great photographer. It's fine, but be willing to trim the hours. Do you really need 10 hours of coverage, or would 8 hours capture everything that matters? Ask whether a second shooter is genuinely necessary or a nice-to-have you can skip to save $500. Step 6. DIY selectively. There are things that can be done beautifully at home for a fraction of the vendor price. Invitations can be designed on Canva and printed at a local print shop for under $150. Wedding favors can be homemade and actually more meaningful. Table signage and menus can be printed for pennies. The trick is to DIY things that won't create stress in the final week before the wedding. Don't DIY the flowers the night before the ceremony, but do DIY the things that are simple, time-stable, and don't require professional skill. Step 7. Get married on a Friday or Sunday. Saturday is the most expensive day of the week to get married. Venues, photographers, DJs, and caterers all charge premium rates on Saturday because that's when demand is highest. A Friday evening or Sunday afternoon wedding can save you 20% to 30% across multiple vendors with zero impact on the quality of the day. Your guests might need to take a half day of work on Friday, but most people are willing to do that for someone they love. Step 8. Skip the things no one remembers. Let me give you a quick list of things we spent money on that had zero impact on our guests' experience and our own memories. Elaborate invitations, wedding favors, the vintage car, the extended bar hours, the sparkler exit. I'm not saying those things are always wrong. I'm saying that for us, looking back, they were dollars that could have gone somewhere more meaningful. The revised budget. If I were planning our wedding today, with the same guest count of 115 people, here's what it would look like. Venue, Smarter Choice $3,500. Catering, food stations instead of plated dinner, $5,200. Bar service, $2,200. Photography, $4,000. Videography, $2,500. DJ, $1,800. Flowers, scaled back, with some DIY $1,800. Dress, still beautiful, pre-owned or lower price point $1,200. Hair and makeup, $1,000. Efficient, $400. Invitations, digital or simple print $200. Cake, local baker $500. Transportation, skip the vintage car $0. Miscellaneous, tips, favors, extras $800. Total, $25,100. That's $8,900 less than we spent. For the same 115 people. The same music. The same love in the room. That $8,900 is a solid emergency fund. It's a down payment on a house. It's 8 months of car payments. It's not nothing. And if we'd also cut the guest list from 115 to 80, I want to spend a moment on something the wedding industry will never tell you. And that's what $34,000 actually represents in terms of your financial future. $34,000 invested in a simple index fund at the historical average market return of about 7% annually becomes roughly $133,000 after 30 years. That's not a made-up number. That's math. Now, am I saying don't have a wedding? Absolutely not. I'm saying, understand the true cost of the decision you're making. When you decide to spend $34,000 versus $18,000 on a wedding, you're not just spending $16,000. You're making a decision about what that $16,000 will do, or not do, for your financial future together. Many couples start their marriages carrying wedding debt. According to various surveys, nearly a third of couples who pay for their own weddings use credit cards, and a meaningful percentage take out formal wedding loans. Starting a marriage in debt is one of the most reliable predictors of financial stress in the first years together. And financial stress is one of the most reliable predictors of relationship strain. The most romantic thing you can do for your marriage might actually be to have a slightly less expensive wedding. Let me wrap up with some concrete, actionable recommendations for anyone planning a wedding right now. First, talk to couples who have been married for 5 or 10 years, not just people who got married last year. Ask them what they remember. Ask them what mattered. The answers will surprise you. Second, give yourself time. Rushed wedding planning is expensive wedding planning. If you get engaged and immediately start booking vendors because you're excited, you will overspend. Take 3 or 4 months before you sign anything. Research, compare, think clearly. Third, define your 2 or 3 non-negotiables and spend there, cut everywhere else. For us, that should have been photography and music. Everything else was variable. Know yours. Fourth, talk openly with your families about expectations and finances. If parents are contributing, understand that contributions often come with opinions. Set clear boundaries early about who has decision-making authority. Unclear financial boundaries during wedding planning create enormous stress. And fifth, remember that your guests are not going to remember your centerpieces, your chair covers, your custom cocktail napkins, or your sparkler exit. They're going to remember if they felt welcome, if they were well-fed, if the music made them want to dance, and if they could see how much you love each other. Look, here's the honest truth. I loved our wedding. I genuinely did. And I have no regrets about marrying my partner. That part was perfect, regardless of the price tag. But I have significant regrets about some of the financial decisions we made in getting there. The wedding was one day. Our marriage is, hopefully, the next 60 years. I wish we had kept that math in mind more clearly when we were signing contracts and swiping our card. If you're engaged right now, you have a real opportunity to do this smarter than we did. The information is out there. The math is clear. The right decisions are actually not that hard once you're willing to have honest conversations about money with yourself, your partner, and your families. Your wedding will be magical because of the love in the room, not because of the price of the linen napkins. Plan accordingly. If this video was useful to you, if it gave you even one idea that saves you money on your wedding, please subscribe and share it with someone who's engaged right now. They might need to hear this. Drop your wedding budget in the comments. I want to know what you spent, what you're planning to spend, and what you would do differently. Let's have an honest conversation down there. And if you want more personal finance content that doesn't sugarcoat the truth, hit that notification bell. I've got a lot more of this coming. See you in the next video.